America. From Channel 00 Chico, the Breakroom begins its nightly broadcast. Ran out of Post-it notes a couple of days ago and had to start writing notes down on my body. Bad thing is I can't shower until I buy some more Post-it notes.
She's a sensation. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm your host, Marty, and as you can tell, I'm in the dark. Today is January 7th out here in Southern California, and we've had some crazy winds. If you watch the news at all about all those fires up in Pacific Palisades, and sure enough, the lights went out of my house here in Southern California, but the show goes on. A couple things about this episode. Normally when I do a band, I use how they did in the Billboard Hot 100 chart as far as which songs I'm going to show. But the band we're going to look at today didn't have any hits on the Billboard Top 100. So I had to take charts or whatever you want to call it from the UK and also college radio stations to compose the song selection on this band. This band was a pioneer of a genre. They started something in the UK that really kind of took off in a different way if you know anything about the UK experience with punk music. But we're going to take a look at their career anyhow. Before we take a look at those songs, like I said, I selected off those other charts. We're going to take a look at this group as they appear in cartoon form on The Simpsons, the Ramones. So sit back, relax, fire up a colored teeny, and watch the pictures as they fly through the air. We'll be right back.
A little different these days at Marty's house. He insisted all the guests keep their shoes on. Guess they're having trouble housebreaking the new puppy.
Welcome back to the program. Like I said, I'm in the dark, so I doubt the power is going to come on anytime during this episode. If it does, it does. So we're going to look at the Ramones, a band from Queens, New York. And like I said, they were considered at least the punk band in America, if not one of the ones that actually started the whole movement. We start this episode off with John Cummings. John Cummings is a young boy who goes to military school most of his life. His father is a very aggressive, violent man, and kind of says a lot about John in the years to come. Finally, he gets to go to a public school in high school. He learns guitar, and one of the people he meets is a young man by the name of Thomas Erdely. Thomas, again, was born in Budapest, but his family moves to Queens. He also plays guitar, and in 1964, him and a friend start a band called the Tiger Five, which doesn't last too long. But in 66, they started a band, and they asked John Cummings to be the bass player. And the name of that band is the Tangerine Puppets. A couple things about this band. A good little band. They last for about a year. But the thing was John on stage. True story about John Cummings. He beat up their own lead singer during a song, and he also punched out Thomas on stage during a performance. And the worst thing he did, probably, they were doing a talent show at the high school they go to, and he went over, and I guess the class president was off in the wings watching the performance. He went over and hit the guy in the nuts with his guitar. John Cummings. John, again, pretty much sells his guitar, gets rid of it. He's out of high school. He's in construction, trying to make a living. He eventually becomes a delivery person for dry cleaning, and he runs into a guy by the name of Douglas Colvin. And Doug has a similar background as John. Douglas's dad was a Army, I guess a master sergeant in the Army. Again, very aggressive, violent drunk. He beats his family. Finally, his mother takes them out of Germany and brings them back to the U.S., and they settle in Queens also. He learns how to play guitar, and in fact, here's a clip of Doug from a small little documentary, I guess. A guy was making, a filmmaker, and he actually interviews Doug in 1969 about if this guy was to make a movie about drugs, what should it be like? Here's Doug.
Oh, just show everybody enjoying themselves like I do. I love to smoke and play my guitar, man. So.
I thought that was an interesting clip. These two men get to know each other, and they find a camaraderie. They both love a couple of bands from Michigan. One band, of course, is MC5, a very political and aggressive band from Michigan, and also somebody who's a little more extreme. Iggy and the Stooges come out of Michigan, and both Doug and John really love these bands and this type of music, a little bit more aggressive than normal music. John's friend Thomas, who was in the band, the Tangerine Puppets, tells John that you and Doug should get in a band. I don't want to be in the band. I'm working at a recording studio, but I can kind of be your manager. I can write songs for you, that kind of thing, and kind of help you along. And so they said, okay, well, let's form a band. So they're going to need a bass player, because both John and Doug play guitar, and a drummer. So first of all, they have to find a bass player, and they go ahead and ask their buddy Richie Stein to play bass, but he doesn't play bass. And of course, they're going to try to teach him how to play bass. And the drummer they get is a young man by the name of Jeffrey Hyman, who lives in their neighborhood. They've known Jeffrey forever. Jeffrey also loves rock and roll. He loves the Beatles, the Who, and he has a big interest in the girl groups in the 1960s. He eventually learns how to play drums, and Jeffrey is a very sickly young man. When he's younger, he has a parasitic twin removed from his back. Look that up. And it messes him up the rest of his life physically, or he has a Marfan syndrome. If you don't know what that is, look it up. And by the time he's like in his late teens, he's diagnosed with schizophrenia. But he keeps playing rock and roll. And he joins a band called Sniper and is their lead singer of this glam punk band. Here is Sniper with Cocksucker.
Sucking all the time. Ooh, it feels so fine.
So the band has been practicing for 4 months, and the bass player Richie is just not getting it. He can't play bass. They said he has no rhythm or no timing. So he's out of the group. And then Tom kind of comes in and says, look it, Doug is having a hard time singing and playing guitar at the same time, because Doug was going to sing. And he says, well, look, why don't you have Jeff get off the drums, because he's on the drums, and have him sing, and all you have to do now is get a drummer, because Doug wants you to play bass. So Doug, who's now changed his name to Dee Dee, jumps on bass. So we have 3 people in this band, John, Doug, and Jeff, and they're looking for a name of the band. And they go through about 40 different versions of names, and Dee Dee kind of convinces John and Jeffrey to change their names, at least their surnames, to Ramone, like he is, and they'll become the Ramones. So now you have Johnny Ramone, Dee Dee Ramone, and Jeffrey becomes Joey Ramone, the Ramones. Since 1971, the musical landscape of New York has really been changing a lot. Bands start getting into glam. Big influences are like, of course, Bowie and Velvet Underground, maybe the Stooges a little bit, MC5, but glam punk is kind of big in New York. And one of the big bands that comes out of that early 1970s, soup of musicians and singers is a band by the name of the New York Dolls, who make their debut at the Mercer Arts Center in May of 1972. Now, the Mercer Arts Center building is one of the only places, I guess, in New York, if you're an original band, to do original music. Most clubs want you to do covers and that kind of thing. And the Mercer is, again, one of those places you can play, along with a place called Max's Kansas City. And what happens in August of '73, the Mercer building falls down. Yeah, the actual building, part of it at least, collapses and takes out, you know, a large area, and the building has to be condemned. And that kind of makes it so there's only a couple places now, Max's Kansas City, that's allowing, you know, new bands to perform. Of course, like anything else in this story, things happen for a reason. In 1973, in late '73, a club owner named Hilly Crystal opens up a club in the Bowery called CBGB's. And by February of '74, he's finally allowing, you know, original bands to do original material. Back with the Ramones, they're still auditioning for a drummer, and they're having a hard time finding one. Like I said, Richie's gone, and every time they bring in a drummer, Thomas comes along to kind of, you know, help them out, check out this drummer, and Thomas keeps kind of showing the drummers how to play these songs because they're really fast. They've taken these songs that they're doing, and they're creating like a song every practice, and they're having like no solos, super fast. The format is different. Every song's like a minute and a half or something. And finally, after they realize at a certain point that, you know, they can't find a drummer, and Thomas, although he doesn't want to do it, he just wants to be their manager, becomes their drummer, and he becomes Tommy Ramone. Now, Joey's voice is different. It cracks, it creaks, it pops. It's unique, and that's what Thomas likes, but John and Dee Dee aren't too sure about it. The glam scene is starting to die, and by '74, the other nightclub of Max's Kansas City is closed up. It's just not working for them anymore. And let's take a look at them doing one of the songs they did during that time. Their whole set is like 17 minutes long. Like they do 6 songs in 17 minutes, so they're really unusual. They finally get into CBGB's in August of '74, and we actually have a clip of them from that time. Someone was actually in the club filming, and here they are, the Ramones, at CBGB's for the first time. They're invited back by Hilly, and after a couple of shows, they're kind of getting a buzz going. And one of the guys who comes to see them is a manager who's managed the Doors. He's managed the Stooges, which they love. They manage the MC5, and his name is Danny Fields. And he actually gets the Ramones a contract with Sire Records. Their first album comes out in February '76, The Ramones. And here's one of the songs from that album, Blitzkrieg Bop.
1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go!
band is touring everywhere, kind of in the East where they live, and every town or city they go into, it energizes the punk scene in that area. It's very obvious that this punk thing is kind of happening, and whenever they kind of shoot through town and do a show, it's fantastic. And so what Danny does is, as their manager, he actually books them in a place that's also into punk right now, and that's the UK. So sure enough, the Ramones go to the UK in July of 1976. Now, punk is different in the UK than it is in the United States. Punk in the UK is more political. It's about young kids not having the opportunity of getting a good job and making a living. And they also want to shock society more. So again, like I said, they're cutting their hair, they're putting clothespins in their noses, they're ripping in their clothes, which is nothing like the Ramones. I mean, the Ramones, if anything, look like a I don't know, a rock and roll gang or something. But they also play very fast. Here's a photo of the band with a couple guys who became big in the UK for punksters. We have Johnny Rotten of the Sex Pistols and Paul Simonon of the Clash hanging out with them backstage. 1977, Phil Spector kind of gets in their orbit and wants to produce their next album, although they don't let him. But about 3 years from now, he does actually produce their album in 1980. Their second album is called Leave Home, and here's a song from that album, Sheena is a Punk Rocker. Third album comes out, and it's called Rocket to Russia, and this is the album that turned me on to the Ramones. I remember it very, very clearly. I was at a graduation high school party, and I heard this music coming out of the phonograph, and I asked my good friend Steve, what is this? And he held up an album and said, Rocket to Russia, the Ramones. First time I heard him, and even back then I heard him and went, oh, this is interesting. I mean, I definitely wasn't into punk music when I was a senior in high school in '78, but the Ramones kind of, hooked into me too. Anyhow, they put out this album, and they have one song that we want to play from that album, I Want to Be Sedated. this episode, I'm only going to be looking at the original Ramones. The 4 guys that actually started the band. Johnny, Dee Dee, Joey, and Tommy. So that is kind of from like 74 to 78. Because again, like most of the bands that I do on this channel, I like the original members of the band. That's when they kind of started out, and that's what most people know them by. And in 78, Tommy leaves, and he still is helping produce the band and writing songs, but he doesn't want to be on the road anymore. That's not his thing, and he wants to be in the studio creating music, so that's where he kind of stays. Here's a song from 1981 called "The KKK Took My Baby Away." Now, the interesting thing about that song is this. In 1980, I don't know, 79, 80, something like that, Joey gets a girlfriend named Linda Danielle. And they're boyfriend-girlfriend for about 3.5 years. And Johnny steals her from Joey. And the song, "The KKK Took My Baby Away," and if you know Johnny, how hardcore he was, it kind of makes sense. But that was like one of the big scandals of any kind of a rock band, when one of the guys takes the other girls away from the other guy. I know the Stones did it with Brian Jones, and I think Anita Pallenberg, is that right? I probably got that wrong. Marianne Faithfull, I think it's Anita. And Keith stole her from Brian, and then where else people stole somebody else? Well, not really, but like Eric Clapton married George Harrison's wife. That was kind of... But anyhow, so Johnny ends up marrying Linda in 1984, and pretty much Johnny and Joey don't speak to each other the rest of the time, although they're civil with each other, but this is a big hit for Joey. The band eventually ends in 1996, and in 2001, Joey passes away, and sure enough, the next year, 2002, the Ramones get inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, Ohio. The Ramones were a one-of-a-kind band. Not too many bands actually started genre, and are considered some of the first people to do that. And again, they weren't really trying to start a genre with punk. They were trying to, write some catchy songs that were only 1 minute and 20 seconds. But they were a great band. And they kind of showed that, at least for punks and punk musicians, that you didn't have to look a certain way to be in a band. These guys were all kind of outcasts. I mean, they all talk about it in their own way, but they got together and they stayed together and they created something that actually was a big part in the history of rock and roll. So again, thank you for watching this dark version of the Break Room. And before I go, I just want to say you've lost your faith, but that's not where it's at. You have no faith to lose, and you know it. We'll see you next time.
Marty says the only time he touches another woman besides his wife is when they pass him a joint.